You got a loud voice too, as I do, because we're going to wait for the winds. We've only got an hour here now.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Dennis is going to give the view, and then we'll do our Gaston and Alphonse. We're going to start now because we've got 1 hour here. So you people that straggle, you're just going to have to suffer. Or maybe you want to straggle. I don't know. It'll hurt Dennis and my ego, straggling on purpose.
Okay, let's get everybody oriented here. As we've talked throughout the last couple of days, the Battle of Antietam, little of it, very little of it was fought along the Antietam Creek, except here. And there was a reason for that. The creek crossings were not actually held by the Confederates. The middle bridge, which is where the Boonesboro-Sharpsburg Pike crosses the creek, is that direction, approximately 2 miles upstream. The creek is flowing from my right to my left, and the Potomac River is approximately 4 miles that direction. Now, if we walked in a straight north-south line, and north incidentally is generally this direction, if we walked in a straight north-south line, the Potomac River is less than 3 miles from here. But because the creek flows back and forth, even some massive bends, it lengthens it. So if you do it in a canoe, it takes a bit of time to get to the river from this point. So Potomac River about 4 miles. The middle bridge about 2 miles up from us where the Boonesboro-Sharpsburg Pike crosses. We've gone over that time and again as we've been going back and forth to the Frye house. And then the upper bridge that looks like this, that we crossed yesterday, is 4 miles upstream. So that's where Hooker's men first crossed, 4 miles from here, on the evening of September the 16th. The bridge is original, not a reconstruction, like the Dunker Church is a reconstruction. This is the original bridge. As Ed pointed out as we were walking over, some of you might have heard him say that it was built for a little bit more than $2,000. A lot of money in the 1830s, but I've got to give my county commissioners, since I've lived here all my life in Washington County, a lot of credit for their vision. That bridge was built 170 plus years ago, and it's still there. And the bridge over the Antietam, the upper bridge, was built 170 years ago, and it's still there and being used. We took 2 buses over it that weighed tons and tons and tons the other day. This bridge was still in use, and I remember coming across and visiting my aunt and uncle and cousins in Sharpsburg, coming right along the old road. The historic road ran parallel to the creek where you see the fence line today. There's a path there. That was actually the original Roarsville-Sharpsburg Road. Roarsville is a village.
That bridge before Dennis Frye was born. You did? In 1950, I crossed that bridge the first time.
That's true. I wasn't born yet in 1950.
No.
What was the floor of the bridge made out of?
It was a compacted clay and stone underneath of it. And so the original road was here, did a right angle bend, up and over the bridge you would go, then it made another right angle bend. The area across from us at the base of the cliff has been carved out. That's not natural. That was carved out. You can see the limestone that's there. Much of the limestone that protrudes was actually limestone they would use to build the bridge. And as Ed pointed out, there are various quarries further up on top of the hill where there is additional limestone that they mined for the construction of this bridge. This bridge is not unique in Washington County. There were 30 of these bridges built between 1824 and 1860. 30 bridges like this. The one that's further downstream is actually a 4-arch stone bridge over the Antietam as it widens out there at the mouth of the Potomac, where it joins the Potomac. And so the real thing, this is the bridge that you crossed, that they crossed. People often ask about that wooden shield on the bridge. What was the purpose of that? That's called the roof of the bridge. That's actually called the roof of the bridge. And its purpose is to keep water, snow, ice from infiltrating from the top. Because the greatest danger of this bridge is not from floodwaters. I was doing a tour here in 1996, standing up where the Georgians were. This bridge was invisible, it was gone. And it hadn't disappeared, it was just under the Antietam Creek, flooding. So, floods aren't a problem. Snow and ice and water from top could be. So, the wooden shingles that you see actually help protect the bridge, and were there in 1862 like that. And as Ed pointed out, this tree, the sycamore tree that's here, appears in the Gardner photographs. It stood about 20 feet high. Of course, its trunk was very thin at the time, survives the battle, survives today. I will tell you that a new superintendent had arrived at Antietam, and I had been asked to come to the park to give the superintendent an orientation. I didn't work here. They asked me to come here and give him an orientation. And so I was giving the superintendent this orientation, and we came to this point and we were talking about the history of this site and how it had changed a bit. And I talked about the witness tree and the fact that it was much smaller at the time of the Civil War. That would seem to be obvious. The superintendent, the new superintendent, looked me in the eye and said very seriously, "Well, I guess we'll have to cut that one down."
Name who the superintendent is. Show you
I'm
got
not going to tell you.
Show you got
I'm
guts.
still working for the agency. I can't tell you. When I retire, I'll write about it. I can't do it right. Huh?
Virgil? Or is it Bill Failure?
Whisper it and let that tell us.
I could have got one of the two of them there.
You don't know how close you are. So anyway, we were able to manage to save the tree, but the superintendent wanted to restore the landscape as it was historically, so he's going to cut that one down and put a younger version of it up. So again, you're on the federal side of the creek, the Union side of the creek. And of course the Confederates hold the high ground, and the reason we stopped up there was so that you get that sense of elevation, what they were seeing, pardon me, what Burnside was facing. Ed's going to fight the action for us, but before we do that, I just want to emphasize, as I said to my bus, Burnside takes a lot of heat here for delay, 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 delay. And when you read the reports that were generated by George McClellan in the aftermath of this battle, he will blame Burnside's delay ultimately in allowing the Confederates to converge from Harper's Ferry, and because Burnside was so delayed, it helped save Lee's army from ultimate defeat. Hence, the Battle of Antietam is not a complete victory for George McClellan, and the rebels are allowed to escape because of Ambrose Burnside and his delays. Let me just say this, that the very first order issued by George McClellan to attack this position is not issued until 9:10 a.m. At 9 o'clock, 4,000 Confederates pull out of this area and go north to the Dunker Church because Lee's in trouble. McClellan did not intend to attack this position at all. Why would he? With 4,000 enemy soldiers up there holding this bastion. Think of this as a medieval castle. Here you see the wall of the castle. The Confederates hold the turrets of the castle. Here is your drawbridge, and there's the moat. Extremely difficult to take that position. McClellan knows what the situation here is in terms of topography, and certainly does Burnside as well. And so, why does McClellan decide to attack this position at 9:10 a.m.? Because rebels are moving that way and abandoning this position. It's opening up an opportunity. McClellan will see it through his eyes up on Red Hill, and he's going to order Burnside to take it. The other thing here, This is more of a defensive action than an offensive action. What do I mean by that? This is designed to keep rebels here, freeze them. If McClellan knows that Lee is moving his men to pressure points along the line, like from here to the Dunker Church West Woods, a pressure point where Lee's about to break, McClellan can't let that happen. He's got to keep men frozen so those pressure points do break. So make sure that you understand that the only reason they attack here is because the Confederates basically abandoned the position with thousands of men.
All right, the order is set at 9:10. At 10 o'clock, Burnside, Cox is in tactical command. Burnside is in command. Cox is in tactical command. Now the first thing they will do, they'll do a twofold operation at 10 o'clock. It is that Isaac Peace Rodman will take his division of 3,200 men, and he is going to move downstream and cross at a point between us and Snavely's Ford. This is a place that his engineers, who have never been on the west side of the river, McClellan's engineers on the west side of the river, see that they believe it is a feasible crossing. When they get down there, they find out it's not a feasible crossing, so that means that they're going to have to go further down to Snavely's Ford. So Snavely's Ford, they will not reach till around, as they're approaching the noon hour. And
map number 24, you'll see all this on map number 24.
They will not be across Snavely's Ford until about 1:15. Now, while he is making that march, planning to cross on the information provided by McClellan's engineers, there's a ford that he's going to find is impracticable. Later on, some of Ewing's brigade will cross in that area. Now, while they're doing that, he's going to keep the Confederates busy here, delaying action. He is going to give that task to a man that gets a big reputation in the Indian Wars, George Crook. But George Crook, we're not going to be able to go into his problems because we don't have time in the Indian Wars. Now, George Crook is to make a demonstration against this bridge at this area here. If he can cross it, all well and good. George Crook is going to use his brigade to do it. Now, you would think a man that's becomes famous because of the Indian Wars won't get lost. And what he is going to do, he is going to take give the 28th Ohio the mission of crossing upstream someplace. And the 28th Ohio is going to get lost, and they're not going to cross up where we're going to be passing till after the 251st are already across. So we can say Crook is lost out. He is going to send the 11th Ohio, and they're going to get lost, and they're not going to make any attack on this bridge. So we could say George Crook is a big not having a good day. So if he's not having a good day, that's not going to be very helpful to Cox and Burnside, because he's going to be, in my opinion, more in my opinion, he's a big cipher. He and his 3 regiments until the late afternoon when we take our afternoon walk. when they finally get across. So at the same time, Colonel Kingsbury, a West Point graduate, number 4 in the class of 1861, will attempt to cover his crossing. Cover the crossing, make a diversion so Crook can get across. But Crook is not going to make much of a diversion. And when Kingsbury's men move up here, Kingsbury is going to have bad luck himself, personally, and the men from his regiment, the 11th Connecticut, are going to have bad trouble because they're going to have a shooting contest extending from this area here down to here with the Confederates on the other side. And Kingsbury's going to be wounded 5 times, but he's not going to be as lucky as John Brown Gordon. The 5 wounds, the 5th one is going to send him to the big beyond the next day. Dennis and I can talk about the human interest stories on him, but we're short of time on this. Kingsbury makes one of these wonderful human interest stories as we go up and go up there where the area where the 28th Ohio is mucking around, accompanying nothing, and then we're going to do a circling around, and we'll be back here hopefully to get you on the bus when we're supposed to. Okay, Dennis, ready to move?
Let's go.
All right.
This vegetated. Weren't nearly as many trees. Much better view of the bridge. The Federals, you're on the Federal side. You're on think of it as the top of a ball. And on one side, the ball drops off towards the bridge. On this side, the ball drops off towards the ravine. So you're on the top of the ball here. If you're on top of this ball, you're exposed to Confederate fire. If you go down this side of the ball, you're exposed to Confederate fire. But on the back side of the ball, on the reverse slope, in other words, away from the enemy, you're totally sheltered. So we just started to walk that direction and went about 300 yards. You'd be completely on a down slope, similar to this, on the other side of that ball. So you're right on top of the ball right now and on the forward slope facing the enemy.
As you're going to find out, this effort by Crook begins at 10 o'clock. By 11 o'clock, it's obvious that it is not working. And McClellan is, Burnside is getting a message from Major Key. Major Key is a hidden genius. He's a man that has a great deal of influence with George B. McClellan. And if he comes down and talks to you, you know whether he is expressing McClellan's ideas. So he's going to be slightly unhappy, and they're going to try again. So the next time, at our next stop, we're going to see how 3 regiments of Nagel's brigade of Sam Sturgis's division. There's Sam, class of 1846, from Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, is going to try it first with Nagel's brigade. Now, concerned because Crook has not carried the bridge, has been confused, or whatever you want to put it, has not accomplished his mission, they're going to send out, the next charge is going to be made up the road as it goes on toward Roarsville. And it'll be made in a column of 4s. We're going to talk about that later. When that fails, so that now is pushing toward 12 o'clock. They try another way. And this time it's going to be on Sturgis's other brigade, led by Brigadier General Ferrero. Ferrero's father was the West Point dancing master. Ferrero will succeed his father as the West Point dancing master. but then we'll leave the West Point dancing halls for teaching West Pointers social graces to join Tammany Hall. So his position that makes him a major player in the Army is he's a member of Tammany Hall, the political machine that's going to control New York most of the time from the 1820s till the advent of Ferrero LaGuardia in 1932. So Ferrero's brigade is going to have it. It's going to be delegated to him. And in his brigade are the two 51st. The 51st New York, commanded by Robert Potter, and the 51st Pennsylvania, commanded by Brigadier General by Colonel Hartranft. So they're going to get the mission. And again, they're going to advance generally from the area we are. There's no missing where the bridge is when they advance. The 51st Pennsylvania will be on the right, the 51st New York on the left. And they're going to charge down and charge across the bridge and get it. Now, Ferrero is not a prohibitionist. In fact, his drinking is going to get him into very bad trouble at the crater. But there's been some infraction in rule, and he has suspended the men's liquor ration. We have a wise guy, Corporal Patterson, in the 51st Pennsylvania, will interrupt him when he's giving him their mission, and he's going to say, will we get our whiskey ration back? And the general and the colonel and Ferrero will say, certainly you will get it back if you get across the bridge. So they're going to line up, and they're going to charge. Remember, 51st Pennsylvania on the left, 51st New York on, 51st on the Pennsylvania on the right, 51st New York on the left, side by side in column, and charge down. But the Confederate resistance is still almost as strong as it had been when they chewed up Nagel's attacking column. And the head of the columns will melt away, and Hartranft's men, since they're on the right, are going to take cover behind that stone wall and start firing at the Confederates on the other side of the moat, or the grate. Potter's men don't have it quite as good, because the stone wall does not extend downstream. But there is some underbrush. They've got the fence to give them protection, but the Confederate fire begins to decrease. They don't know why. We do, because we're reading about it later, because Reno's men are now crossing at Snavely's Ford. The Georgia boys' ammunition is getting short, and they know if they continue to cross at Snavely's Ford, they're going to be cut off. And some of the fainted-hearted fellows who are getting short of ammunition are going to leave their firing positions on the other side. Men of the 20th and the 2nd, Georgia, and as the firing begins to noticeably decrease, they're going to then originally be thought of by Hartranft. He's going to get a corps of people. He's going to get 2 men to carry the flags. We're going to get a color guard, and we're going to rise up, and we're going to charge across the bridge. At the same, and there's one real tough man, Corporal Alshoff, is going to go with them, and at the same time as they start moving toward it, Potter will do the same thing with his color guard and the colors, and the two colors will move across and reach the other side of the creek, and they will, within a short time, have the bridgehead established on the other side. So finally, the Confederates reducing the rate of fire. And all this time, the Confederates are getting more nervous as more and more reports come up. And the Confederates have also redeployed the 12 guns of the Washington artillery that were supporting them on the ridge immediately to the west of the bridge, and they've been redeployed. And so the Union are now across. We'll get Dennis's thoughts on it, and then we'll go on and on our race to get back on the, not to be too late for lunch.
Sorry, Mary. That's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
We can't leave here without this comment. Take a look at your map. Take a look at your map.
Number?
It's number 24. To hold the map correctly, north is going to be to your left, this direction. So you hold the binder parallel to the creek. 24, lower left corner. This map cannot possibly be correct. Not possibly correct. This is why you come out and you ground truth the battlefield. This is two-dimensional. This is three-dimensional. You cannot have 800 men marching in column, maintaining column of 4, following the route shown on this map down this slope. That's not going to happen. What is correct is you're going to find in a moment that it's going to take you into a ravine to your left, a ravine which is wide open and leads right to the bridge, wide enough for 2 columns of 4 men side by side to go right down the ravine. That's where they went. So all I'm saying is, you even got to be careful of this stuff, because it is not correct when you take a look at the ground. They didn't go the route that's shown there. That's not gravity-wise possible for them to keep order and make the assault when they got a ravine that leads them right to the bridge. The other thing that's wrong about this map is called words. Quote, after multiple attempts to take the lower bridge, the 251st finally succeeded in crossing. There were not multiple attempts. Once again, that's all designed to follow the McClellan lead on diminishing Burnside's reputation. And then when we get down to our particular picture, we'll tell you how many casualties occurred here with these, quote, multiple attempts.
And there, as you can see, clock. Probably 11:20. Now, Sturgis is now on center stage. He has Nagel's brigade. He decides they're going to commit 3 regiments of Nagel's brigade. Nagel's brigade will probably be about 1,600 men. So they're going to commit the 3rd to the 2nd Maryland. So you guys are all in the 2nd Maryland, commanded by Colonel Abram Duryea. And you guys back here, about 250 men behind them, are going to be in the 6th New Hampshire. Behind those 400 men in the 6th New Hampshire is going to be the 9th New Hampshire. And there's no way that you guys can miss that bridge. You're going to be, you're smarter than Crook. You've got a road leading right to it, so there's no way. And you've straggled down like those people are straggling down, and it's probably 11:15 before you're ready to advance. Now, where are the Confederates? Right across the creek. About 45 yards from you, in among the woods there. And just think you're at the carnival. You've got the huts like Dennis Frye's at the carnival, back when he's back in Boonesboro High School. He's showing off for his girlfriend.
I actually did that,
One of the 2
Ed.
girlfriends.
I did that.
And they've gone to the place where you pay a certain amount of money, and with a pellet gun, you shoot at these little rabbits and squirrels going across.
Mine were ducks.
And if you hit them, you get the dog. You win enough of them. So that's what you're in essence doing. And that's what you're going to do. But you're only going to get, you're going to be 100 yards before you reach the bridge. Before you've lost so many men that Colonel Abraham Duryea decides we're not going any further. What does that happen to you're lucky if you're in the 6th New Hampshire. Just every movie. That means this attack is going to fail. Hey, you're supposed to, what you going substitute?
I got displaced. We got to go.
All right, so we're going to advance at 80 steps a minute as those SOBs across the road shoot you to pieces. You're going to get to
some of these lots of questions and answer them briefly for you. Number one, when did we finally take the bridge? Zed didn't get that far. The attack that you did in Column was the only real assault against the bridge all day. Nagel's men, 2nd Maryland, 6th New Hampshire. That was it. That was a bloody one, because as you could well tell from your position, your arrangement, that column of 4 going along that road, you were very exposed, and so that would be the attack that would produce the greatest number of casualties, obviously. But there really was only one attack. Now, Ed referred to 3. I like to refer to it as 1. I have come to the conclusion Crook was not lost at all. That's not conventional history, but I think he was doing exactly what he's supposed to do, which was to protect the flank of the Union Army, because there was Confederate fire coming from what I just call Stone Mill Ravine. You will see on your map number 24, there is a building identified as a stone mill. There is a creek, an unnamed creek that runs from that stone mill and drains into the Antietam, and there is a large ravine associated with that whole drainage. We're going to talk about all of this later today. This is what we'll be walking. This is the final assault attack. Burnside gets across the bridge, lines up on the ridge to our left, and Burnside is going to be moving from our left down across this ground and to our right, to the high ground to our right. Ultimately, where you see the monument, the obelisk to your right, that would be the apex of the federal assault there on Harper's Ferry Road Ridge. Right to the right of that horrible house. If I had a bazooka, I'd love to take that house out. That is a classic example of an easement gone bad. This is all under easement, but the lawyer worked a couple of loopholes into the easement which allowed 2 houses on this easement. One was built, the other one was going to go on this property. It was never built. So that house has been there since 1973, and I remember very well when it went up and how badly it desecrated the battlefield. So anyway, we're going to be ultimately at this monument and walking all of this ground later today as we do the final assault. And we're in the vicinity now where A.P. Hill would counterattack coming up from Harper's Ferry, and I'm not going to go into much detail about any of that because you're going to experience that. The other famous cornfield on the battlefield was right here to our left, which is where A.P. Hill would break into Burnside's left flank as he was moving towards the Harper's Ferry Ridge top here to our forward. Now as we move forward, we're heading towards the Harper's Ferry Road Ridge. So anyway, Nagel's attack fails, as we've pointed out, but that was really the only attack. Crook was in a position to protect the flank, and Crook was in a position to go across a ford upstream. When we saw the modern bridge that was completed in 1964, before we started our steep ascent up the hill, there's a ford there. Crook had found that ford, but he couldn't get across because the Confederates were holding it. So I think Crook was where he was supposed to be, wasn't lost at all. What they were doing is they were waiting for Rodman to do the flanking maneuver. That was the key to the success. Don't attack the center of the enemy's line and straight go around them. So that's what Burnside was doing, and that's the reason so much time was taken. The only real assault, direct assault on the bridge that would come was with the 51st New York and 51st Pennsylvania, as Ed pointed out. And the 51st don't, the 251st do not attack until Rodman is basically in the rear of the enemy, on the high ground behind the enemy, holding the bridge. Of course, now with their Yankees to their rear and Yankees to their front, they're going to flee the position. They just leave. So when the 51st arrives there is going to be a battle, short one, very short one. And the 51st that's not behind the stone wall, which I think was the 51st Pennsylvania, is going to get shot up pretty good because they can't get across the bridge. That fence was a bottleneck. But once they felt Rodman's pressure, the enemy did, Rodman's pressure to the rear, they get out of there and the 51st go across the bridge with very few casualties. And so only really one assault on the bridge failed, and that was Nagel's. And the other assault on the bridge, which was the 51st and the 51st, succeeded. That was it. So how do we know that this really was not the butchering ground that has been presented by historians for decades and decades? When you think about the Burnside Bridge, we think about Burnside just banging and banging and banging, attack after attack after attack, frontal assault after frontal assault, and his men just getting blasted as he moves against that bridge. That did not happen. Why is it our impression that Burnside beat himself up against that bridge? Because that's what happened at Marie's Heights in Fredericksburg 3 months later. It did not happen here. When Burnside's reputation gained in Fredericksburg for beating his army into a bloody pulp from frontal assault after frontal assault was transferred backwards to Antietam, where it never happened. And Burnside still hasn't shaken that reputation 150 years later. So actually, the total number of casualties down here are going to be only federal casualties, about 400. 400. Which should say to you that Burnside was not beating his head against that bridge. At Bloody Lane, total federal casualties at Bloody Lane, 5,000. More than 10 times more the casualties of the Burnside bridge. So Burnside takes the toughest position on the field with the fewest number of casualties because he basically goes around it. He flanks it with Rodman's division. It did take 3 hours. It took time. And McClellan is going to use that time against Burnside in his reports written months after the battle to denigrate Burnside and claim that Burnside was delaying and delaying and delaying. Not the truth at all. Burnside was waiting for his maneuver to be completed before he made that frontal assault against the bridge with the 251st, and it resulted in few casualties, and he took the position. I mentioned to you earlier that I really think McClellan orders the attack on the bridge not as an offensive action, but more defensive, to keep the rebels occupied so Lee can't be shifting troops from one position to another. McClellan is sensing victory at the north end of the field, and if Lee is shifting troops from one end to the north end, McClellan's victory is not going to come. So he had to keep the rebels occupied, and Burnside's job was to do that. I think perhaps the most surprised man in the army that Burnside actually got across the bridge was Jordan McClellan. He did what? He got across the bridge? He took the bridge? Here was Lee's headquarters right here. You'll see a monument, a UDC monument. That was a tent. Lee did not have his headquarters in a house. That was a tent site in the woods, a grove of trees. You are outside the village of Sharpsburg now, and you're heading west on the Sharpsburg-Shepherdstown Turnpike. You're heading toward the Potomac River. And we will be in Shepherdstown at our lunch site where we will have a view of the Potomac River in just a moment. Now this was the most direct road back to Virginia, today West Virginia, in 1862, this turnpike. This is an extension of the Boonesboro-Sharpsburg Turnpike, but once you get west of Sharpsburg, it becomes the Shepherdstown-Sharpsburg Turnpike. You'll see a railroad to your right. You will look at any Civil War map, you will find no railroad in this vicinity. None. The nearest railroad to Sharpsburg is the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad at Harper's Ferry. no railroad. The railroad arrives here in 1879 and 1880. And we're coming up on the train station to our right, the Antietam station. There is the original station. And there, thousands of veterans in the 1880s and 1890s would indeed get off of this rail line, which today is Norfolk Southern, and come to the battlefield via rail and go there to that station. The Grove Farm is to our left. We'll talk more about that, but you can see in the trees a building on there to our left. We'll talk about the Grove Farm more on our way back. That really began the modern preservation movement here at Antietam when the Grove Farm was threatened with a commercial development. The Grove Farm was the site of the photograph of Lincoln, McClellan, and Fitzjohn Porter, one of the most famous of the photographs taken by Gardner during Lincoln's visit here in 1862.
And Letterman.
And Letterman and George Custer. Yes, Jonathan Letterman's in the picture, and Gorgeous George is off to the right, the far right. There he stands as a young captain on McClellan's staff.
And the dog.
Oh, pardon me, acting captain, yes.
Whose dog was that?
First lieutenant, the regulars, and an acting captain.